Hello, I'm Rebecca the Maths Lady and welcome to this video which is all about teaching two-dimensional shape to children aged 7 to 11. In this video I'm going to explain how you can teach children to become really happy and confident and fluent with regular polygons, different types of triangles and different types of quadrilaterals. And if you're not quite sure what those terms mean, don't worry, it'll all become clear. Right, let's get started. So first of all, this video is all about flat or two-dimensional shapes. So we're not looking at solids, three-dimensional shapes. We'll be coming back to those in video 9. Instead, we're looking at flat shapes, like this octagon here. Now, the first thing to face head on is that this topic does involve a lot of rote learning of names of shapes. The names of shapes are often not logical at all. Most maths is logical and can be understood and predicted without rote learning. But when you're naming a lot of shapes, there is no logic, so there is a lot of rote learning. So one approach is just to drill it into them, but that is really dull and it's not going to make them love maths. So we're going to try and do a bit better than that. So first of all, you as a teacher need to know your definitions really securely. So let's explore them now. All the shapes we're going to be covering in this video are polygons. Yet another word that's not logical. If it was logical, a polygon would be a dead parrot. It isn't. A polygon is a shape with straight sides. There's only one shape that hasn't got straight sides that we focus on at primary school, and that's the circle. And that's got its own video. So we're not going to cover that in this video. The first set of polygons we're going to be looking at is the regular polygons with different numbers of sides. So you have an equilateral triangle. You have a square, a regular pentagon, a regular hexagon, a regular octagon, and a regular decagon. Now, what does the word regular mean? It means that all the sides of the shape are the same length as each other, and all the angles or corners or vertices is the better word than corners, but it means the same thing, are the same size as each other. And if you had a paper shape, you could test that by tearing away the corner and fitting it onto another corner. If you've done measuring angles, then you can measure the angles and check they're all the same size. But if you haven't done that yet, tearing vertices off and seeing that they fit on each other all the way round is your way of checking to see that that shape is regular. The two shapes I didn't have in this set are the heptagon, which has 7 sides, and the nonagon, which has 9 sides. They don't usually occur in apparatus because they don't tessellate. And one of the great activities with materials like this is that because they are designed with the side length being consistent between the shapes, you get some fabulous patterns and tessellations out of them. Tessellations are just patterns that can be repeated forever without leaving any gaps. So how are we going to help children remember the names of these shapes? Well, the most important thing is to play with the shapes and use the vocabulary in context. You want tasks where the child is asking for a pentagon or asking for a hexagon. But it's also useful to think about the words in depth. Equilateral triangle we're going to come back to when we think about triangles. Square, they'll know already. Pentagon, penta, usually relates to 5. You can get a pentagram in magic, or you can get the pentathlon in the Olympic Games. Hexagon. Hex doesn't really mean 6, so it's not very helpful, but it does have 3 letters and end in X, like 6, and that can be quite helpful. Heptagon just needs to be learned. Octagon is a nice one to link to an octopus, has 8 legs. Nonagon isn't easy. Decagon, well, there are lots of things that link dec to 10, not least of which decimal numbers are all about tenths and 100ths, and each column being 10 more than the last column. One confusing thing is the months October, November and December. You would really hope they were the 8th, 9th and 10th months to link to octagon, nonagon and decagon. But sadly they're the 10th and 11th and 12th months. And it can be useful just to lean into that because, of course, they used to be the 8th, 9th and 10th months in the Roman calendar. So there is a link in the vocabulary there. But then when we moved to 12 months, they stayed as being the last months of the year. If there's going to be a confusion, sometimes it's best to talk about it. So the best way to give your children a real sense of enjoyment of regular polygons is to give them a set of apparatus where they've got polygons with different numbers of sides, all the sides are the same length, and let them build tessellations and talk about their tessellations and use their vocabulary. These are ATM mats. I'll place a link to where you get them from in the description of this video. You can do tessellations with Polygon. Obviously the sides aren't quite straight, but they are just adjusted so that they clip. This does work in the same way. But the ultimate resource that you want, if you can get hold of it, is definitely magnetic Polygon. And I would love to have that to show you today, but it is quite expensive. But as a one-off investment for your school, it is a great investment because it is so tactile and such fun to play with. Some children will struggle with the clipping mechanism of Polygon. And of course the sides aren't straight. With magnetic Polygon, the sides are perfectly straight and everything just pings together so easily. If you've none of this apparatus, you may want to use an online app just to give your children some experience with these regular polygons so they can play around with them and build patterns and tessellations. But of course, it's so much better with real objects to move. It's just much more fun. And that magnetic Polygon will come in useful again for other topics in this series, I promise. So here are just a few examples of some tessellations I made earlier with the ATM mats and with the Polygon. Okay, our next topic is our triangles. Children need to be able to compare the lengths of the sides of triangles. If all the sides are the same length, they are all equal, therefore you get an equilateral triangle. You can't get any other shape. If two of them are equal and the other side is different, you get an isosceles triangle. And remember that isosceles triangle isn't always sitting on its base, it can be other ways round. And if all three sides are unequal, you have a scalene triangle. Sorry, I don't know of any really easy ways of remembering those words. They just need lots of practice and to be learned and tested, and I'm going to show you some ways of doing that soon. The other triangle it's worth identifying with children is a right angle triangle. If a triangle has one corner that's the same shape as a square, and of course that can be in any orientation, a square corner, right angled, then it's called a right angle triangle. And of course that right angle triangle could be scalene or it could be isosceles, and that's worth discussing too. And then you need to know and be able to teach quadrilaterals. So we have a square that everyone's used to, which is the regular quadrilateral, where all the angles are right angles and all the sides are the same size. Then we have a rectangle with 4 right angles and 2 pairs of sides of the same length. We have the rhombus, which is the squashed square. That's the other shape where all the sides are the same length, but the angles have changed. We don't have 4 right angles anymore. We have the parallelogram, which is the pushed over rectangle. So the sides are the same lengths as a rectangle, but it's not got right angles anymore. The kite, which like the rectangle has 2 pairs of equal sides, but they're arranged in a different order. So instead of the 2 short sides being opposite each other, they're next to each other, and the 2 long sides are next to each other. Then we have a trapezium, which just has 1 pair of parallel sides, and it can be symmetrical. That's an isosceles trapezium, which is like an isosceles triangle, but with the top chopped off. But it doesn't have to be symmetrical. It can be a wonky trapezium. You have an arrowhead, which has 1 angle that goes inwards. And finally, you have the irregular quadrilateral, which does not fit any of the other rules. So what kind of activities can we do that will get children enjoying these shapes? Well, if you've got a set of Meccano, you can certainly ask them to build them with Meccano. If you've got no Meccano, you could ask them to build them with straws. If you've got cut out shapes in card, You can put them in a feelie bag. A child can choose a shape and try and puzzle out what it is. You can get children to draw shapes on each other's backs with their fingers, and the other child has to guess what it is. You could put them in pairs and have a competition. You can set challenges where you give a child the name of a shape and they have to describe that shape so other people can guess it without using the name of the shape. If you've got geoboards, which are the boards with pegs and you put elastic bands on them, can they make the shapes with elastic bands on geoboards? That's a lovely one to do. You might have some pattern blocks. This is a learning resources kit. Comes with all these shapes, and there are cards inside where you have to build the patterns. A lovely physical activity. If you've got some skipping ropes, if you set up groups of about 4 children and one child is holding both ends of the skipping rope and the other children hold the skipping rope out in approximately a circle, and then they have to move their hands and pull them tight to create each of the shapes that you name. That's a great challenge. And you can embed this vocabulary outside the maths lesson if you're out in the field setting out for a game. You might ask the children to set out a regular pentagon for a game of rounders where the batting position is at one point and bases 1 to 4 are at the other points. Can you ask them to set out different shapes for different reasons? If you're doing PE, can they make shapes with their bodies or in pairs with balances and partners? And just when they think they're getting really smart at this and they've learnt it and they know it inside out, I've got one more activity for you that's just a quickie for the end of the lesson or a start of the lesson to make sure that they know that you're the boss and they don't know everything. So you take an A4 sheet of paper and you're going to fold that short side to long side like this, and then you turn it round like this and you do the same again here. So that paper now looks like this, and you simply ask the children, what shape have I made? And that leads to all sorts of discussion. It's a real challenge, and it's quite rare that children actually get it right until you do this. And suddenly it's a kite. So because there's a lot of rote learning of names in this topic, you will need some consolidation. It's worth setting it as a homework for children to learn those shape names. It's worth practicing and testing. It's worth having some flashcards to practice and test, but it's more fun to test them with the kinds of activities that I've just described. If you're doing something with modelling material, definitely get them to make shapes with the rolled out modelling material. If you're baking biscuits, why not make biscuits in the shapes that you've just been studying? It can lead to all sorts of interesting discussion because, of course, when biscuits cook, the sides which were perfectly straight when they went into the oven don't generally come out perfectly straight. So is it still the shape it was meant to be? Well, it kind of is-ish. This is the real world. Do those definitions actually fit what we're trying to say? So in summary, in this video, I've explained how we give children a deep understanding of the regular polygons, the different triangles and the different quadrilaterals, and how we need to consolidate that understanding with fluency with the vocabulary. I've described loads of great tasks you can use, and of course different teachers can use different tasks in different years. I hope it's a topic you'll really enjoy. I haven't done the detailed drawing of shapes. I'll cover that when we've done drawing angles. I've not done perimeter, that will have its own video. I've not done the area of any of these shapes, that's got its own video too. I've also not done symmetry of the shapes, I'll be covering that in video 7. And as I said, I've not covered circles and the construction of a regular hexagon that goes with drawing circles. That's coming in the video on circles. And children will also be doing some more detailed drawing of shapes when they do nets of 3-dimensional shapes. They have to draw 2-dimensional shapes accurately. So all of that's to come, and all of it will consolidate this topic. I haven't covered the formal definitions of quadrilaterals in detail. Children will do that at secondary school, so they will wrestle with the idea that a square is a special kind of rectangle and so on. So you don't need to get into that in a lot of detail. Just enjoy developing a general appreciation of these shapes. Sure, flex them to the max. Let's see who can draw the weirdest trapezium. Who can draw the strangest parallelogram? So they're challenged to really think about what those shapes are. But the detail of the definition of why they are as they are is yet to come. So So in this video, it just remains for me to thank the fabulous members of the Expert Primary Maths Teaching Facebook group who contributed a lot of these ideas. I can't give them all credit because a lot of them have very strange names that I'm sure aren't their real names on Facebook, but I'm hugely grateful for their contributions. I really hope that's going to continue throughout this series, that I'll be able to ask teachers which tasks they really love and make sure I can share them all with you. If you've any thoughts or suggestions, please add them in the comments. And if you've time to give us a like or subscribe to the channel or tell your friends about it, I'd be hugely grateful. Hope to see you again soon for the second video in this series, which is all about length. Bye for now.